Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Thursday, marks 3 years since the beginning of South Sudan's bloody conflict. International efforts to stem the violence appear to have stalled as the ethnic dimension to fighting deepens. Also, several people are killed in Mogadishu in yet another bomb blast claimed by Somali jihadists from Al-Shabab. Over a dozen people were injured in the attack. Their group appears to be ramping up violence as elections drag on. And Zimbabwe's ruling party is preparing for its annual meeting this weekend to confirm that 92-year-old Robert Mugabe will be running for office once again in 2018. But he's under pressure because of the country's struggling economy, the crisis made worse by the introduction of a bond note many fear may mean the return of hyperinflation. But first, Thursday marked 3 years since the beginning of bloody conflict in South Sudan, the world's youngest country. Tens of thousands have died, more than 3 million people have been forced from their homes, and peace deal after peace deal has disintegrated into more violence. The UN's warned that the country stands on the brink of a Rwanda-like genocide. Rebel chief and former Vice President Riek Machar is Anua. He's currently in exile in South Africa. His forces have been pitted against soldiers backing President Salva Kiir, who's from the Dinka ethnic group. Hearing now from Alan Boswell, who tells us a bit more about the background to the country's crisis.
South Sudan didn't even make it through its first power struggle. The war basically erupted as they were moving towards their first elections, and that sparked off a leadership battle within the ruling party, the SPLM. And so immediately upon the first time they had their vice president, the president, and other political leaders vying for power, this entire structure basically collapsed. And since then, it's, as you said, been 3 years of fighting, a peace process that when it was put together, it basically immediately collapsed into more violence and spread the war. And now we're looking at a third year. This is the end of the third year of fighting, and there's not even a peace process anymore.
So from the beginning, we heard insistence from South Sudan that the conflict wasn't ethnically motivated. We've heard increasingly over the last few months international warnings about genocide becoming an element of the conflict. Is this something that's just developed over time, or is this something or a side of the fighting that's been there from the beginning?
Yeah, people sometimes forget that the fighting started off as ethnic cleansing in the capital, Juba. You even hear 30,000 ethnic Nuer being murdered is the figure often cited. And since that time, the violence has continued to be waged as this against ethnic blocs. And a lot of that goes back to the very basic flaw of this, of what became South Sudan, which is that there wasn't probably sufficient thought given to the political structure of South Sudan, and as a place that was basically a bunch of ethnic enclaves without a state. When the political struggles happened, they became manifested as simply militias being mobilized from the bottom up, which happened, of course, in an ethnic manner because that's what was there. So these concerns of genocide in some ways are not a new thing, but are in fact are more of the same. And the situation in many ways just keeps getting worse.
So looking forward, do you think that there's still much hope from the international community that they can now do much to change the trajectory of the conflict?
One of the sadder things as we hit the third year anniversary is that after July, after the last peace process fell apart, the international community actually made a process of making a policy to prevent another peace process. So at the moment, there actually is no peace process in place to resolve this. The region could probably step in, South Sudan's neighbors, at any point, but at the moment, there's really no consensus or momentum to do so.
Alan Boswell there telling us more about South Sudan's last few years of trouble. Well, several people were killed in Mogadishu on Thursday, and yet another bomb blast laid at the feet of Somali jihadist group Al-Shabab. Over a dozen others were injured in the attack. Mary Colin Bell has the story.
Witnesses say the army checkpoint in the east of Mogadishu was bustling with people when a bomb planted at the foot of a tree exploded.
At least 6 people, most of them soldiers, were killed. God bless them. Women and children were also injured.
Al-Shabab extremists have claimed responsibility, saying they deliberately targeted soldiers. The militants who want to overthrow the government once held large parts of Somalia before being ousted from the capital in 2011. They've since continued to attack the government, military and civilian sites throughout the country. Earlier on Thursday, several people were wounded in a suicide car bombing not far from the presidential palace in Mogadishu. The driver detonated a bomb after a high-speed car chase with police.
I was sitting at the restaurant and saw a vehicle crossing the other side of the road. The car hit the perimeter wall of the restaurant, then followed a huge bang with fire and smoke.
The restaurant was reportedly popular with journalists. Authorities say the attack bears the hallmarks of Al-Shabab. The group's been ramping up bombings in a bid to disrupt Somalia's drawn-out parliamentary elections. The 3-month vote is due to end on December 29th.
The UN's next chief has chosen Nigeria's Environment Minister as his Deputy Secretary General. Amina Mohammed will serve alongside incoming United Nations head Antonio Guterres when he takes up his post on January the 1st. Before becoming Environment Minister, Mohammed was current UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon's Special Advisor on Development Planning. Gambia's president-elect has said that he'll be declaring himself president in January at the end of the term of the current leader, even if Yahya Jammeh refuses to step down. Adama Barrow won the election at the start of the month, but Jammeh is contesting defeat. After ruling the country for 22 years, he had originally accepted his loss, and his party this week launched a legal challenge to results. Zimbabwe's ruling party will be holding its annual meeting this weekend to confirm that 92-year-old Robert Mugabe will be running for office once again in 2018. Now, he's been in power since 1980 and looks to be angling to be a leader for life. But he is under pressure because of the country's struggling economy, a crisis made worse by the introduction of an unpopular bond note meant to ease the currency crisis. But many Zimbabweans think that it will mean the return of hyperinflation. Our correspondents have the story.
In Zimbabwe's capital Harare, queuing in front of banks starts at dawn for those who want their salaries. And a new currency introduced last month has not helped.
It is so difficult to get the money these days. Look at me, I had to come here as early as 2:30 in the morning just to join the queues. This is where they gave us the bond notes. So far, those notes are working. I don't know what will happen on the long run, but for now, we can use them to pay for public transports.
The note has the size, the color and the value of the greenback, but it is not the American dollar. This paper is a bond note guaranteed by the Zimbabwean government. Consumers treat it as a hot potato. They worry it will lose its value. Their fears are worsened by the fact that the opposition criticizes the new currency.
The time has now come to bring to the attention of the ZANU-PF government that all these policies are short-lived and that this is very suicidal.
Suicidal because no one knows if the Reserve Bank will resist the temptation to print more money. The dramatic hyperinflation of 2009 is still fresh in people's minds. Zimbabweans were then doing their shopping in trillions of dollars. For now, though, the situation seems under control.
So I think the discipline is there from the Reserve Bank, from the Ministry of Finance, because they want a very stable platform from which to hold the party congress. What might happen next year, though, when we've gone past the payday? They've always had difficulty paying that in the last few years because there's so little money. Well, the wage bill itself has absorbed 91% of the tax revenue for 2016. So there's almost nothing left to run the country.
People cannot draw more than $50 a day, and civil servants have just been told that they won't get their 13th check before the beginning of next year. Zimbabweans will go through this festive season with a severe cash crisis.
Now, there were celebrations in Gabon on Thursday as sales for tickets for the African Cup of Nations began. The country will be holding the Continental Tournament from mid-January, when the opening games between Gabon and Guinea-Bissau and Cameroon and Burkina Faso kick off on the 14th. Now, fans were shown the way to the hot ticket of the season by mascot Samba, who collected his own ticket at a tax office in Libreville. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us. Do so again. Take care.